It has come time to pull the carb and the fuel pump off of this engine. So I'm regretting already putting this radiator in to get to this fuel pump, but I plan on removing this alternator because it's in the way. We may or may not go back with this. I do have the generator from the parts car that I can look into, but the carburetor has to come apart too. When I tried to start it last time, I filled the float bowl full of gas and it didn't do anything, so I'm assuming it's probably just full of dirt, or I didn't put enough gas in it. I don't know, we'll see. But with that being said, we'll get this alternator out of the way and see what we got. Here's the fuel pump off the car, and I was confused when I was taking it off. I was like, why are there 4 lines to it? So we have this, and then we have this. So these are for the fuel part on the bottom, but then the top, I noticed, runs a vacuum hose into the inside of the car. So I'm thinking that the top part is the vacuum pump. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 pump. So we'll take the bottom part apart first. You can see the filter inside, and then we'll work on the top. I'm hoping the kit that I got has all the right diaphragms and stuff. It looks like it does. I mean, there's one, and there's a second. So looks right. We'll see. But I'll get all that stuff out of there and blow the fuel pump apart and see what we have, clean it up, and make it look a little bit better. Alright, the rebuild on this fuel pump is actually going pretty well. I think it's actually been rebuilt in the past because there's quite a few parts on it that look pretty decent. Most of the rubber inside was good. If I pulled this pump apart, which is from my parts car, I guarantee you a lot of the rubber would just crack and fall apart, which I didn't know about this one until I took it apart. So this one had a whole bunch of nasty gas in it. I mean, it was awful. But this one inside was actually pretty clean. So for example, there's one end. This is where the fuel actually gets pumped, so not too bad. I am going to go ahead and use most of the gaskets out of the kit that I bought because I already bought it. The one casualty that we had was that part cracked right there, but I'm pretty sure I'll still be able to use it. This doesn't really wobble at all. All this is supposed to do is hold this rod in place. Now, something interesting, you look at the push arms on these fuel pumps. They are a little bit different, but they're the same, off of the same engine, so there shouldn't be a problem putting all this stuff back together. Another thing that I've noticed is that this fuel pump came with a paper filter, whereas this one had the original stone filter. But I'll tell you what, the gas that was actually, there was still gas. Here's a good example. Still gas inside of this one, and it is nasty. Like way worse than any gas I've ever smelt. Who knows how old it is. But basically I'm picking the best parts out of the two, putting it together with all brand new rubber inside, and it should work out really well. Something interesting and something I like about this pump is every piece says made in USA. So I like mechanical fuel pumps a little better than electronic ones, just because you get a loose connection and boom, you have no fuel. Whereas these should work for a long time. Since I have the fuel pump out and on the bench, I'm going to move on to the cooling system. I probably, if the motor turns out to be a decent motor, I'll probably end up putting a new water pump on it, because I think you can buy them pretty cheaply. But what I've done already is I have put radiator hoses on it. So these are actually radiator hoses that I've had from Corvettes that I parted out. They're decent hoses. They're not new, but they're definitely not old, and they will work just fine. So I got this bottom one going, it doesn't hit the fan, so we're good. And then this top one is a little bit kinked, but once you get it in place and pressurized, it'll be just fine. The one thing I will replace is the thermostat. The one that was in here was 180 degrees, and I will replace it with the same one. I thought this thermostat housing gasket would be the same as like a small block Chevy, but it looks a little bit bigger, so I have a roll of cork right there that I'm going to make the gasket out of with some RTV, and we should be good. So I need to make sure this motor holds water. That's the main thing. Here's the result of my homemade gasket. Hopefully it works out decent. There's the old one. Obviously it wasn't going to work at all, so new thermostat and a little bit of RTV, very, very thin to make it seal. Fingers crossed it'll work. If it doesn't, I mean, I'm sure a new gasket's like $3, so we'll give it a try. And of course, right as I get that on, guess what? it starts pouring. So looks like work on the Oldsmobile will have to wait for today. Alright everybody, check out this carburetor. I got it off. So it was crazy. There were two fuel lines. There's also a vacuum line in the front for the vacuum advance, and then there's a vacuum line for the choke. So 4 lines, plus it had this goofy linkage, which it's weird. It's like there's 2 gaskets. Like there's one above the bracket and one below. So we'll see what happens when I get it all taken apart. But when I tried to start the engine last, I filled the float bowl, which is right here, full of gas, and nothing happened. So it warrants taking it apart and looking inside it at least. Got all the screws out and pull the top of the carburetor off. I like what I see. The inside looks really, really nice, at least the bottom of the inside. Floats look okay. Accelerator pump's dried out. Not too bad, so we'll set this aside. Looks like we got a stuck needle and seat a little bit. Inside the bowls, ooh! Yeah, I could see why it doesn't run. You see all that trash in there? Let's see what happens when we turn it over. Yep, all that crap was inside of that carburetor. But with that being said, it does look pretty good in there. I might be able to get away with just spraying it out with carb cleaner and not letting it soak. We'll see how the passages look, but that's not too bad. I like to see them like that. I like to not see water or any rust or anything like that inside of them. And it's good to have all the pieces that still move, that kind of thing. As I keep tearing down this carburetor, I kind of figured out what this extra metal plate is underneath it. So I got it loose, and then it dawned on me, this is basically like an add-on plate that they would put on the carburetors for the cars with the automatic transmissions. So like a Chevrolet from the 70s, the shifts are controlled by vacuum, but in the 50s, similar to my Cadillac, they're controlled by a rod that attaches to all this stuff. So with that gone, then the carb would go back to a carb for like a 3-speed manual, but that was like an addition to the carburetor so that it could be for an automatic. So in trying to figure out that, I noticed we have one little problem. I have a broken screw right there. This is the primary side of the carburetor. I know I can fix the little flapper to make it flat again, but I don't know how in the world I'm going to get that screw out of there. So I'm going to keep disassembling, think about it, and see what I can do. Hopefully it won't be too bad of a job, but I'm worried about that. Well, it's one of those days. So I ended up getting this off, which yes, it was bent and looked kind of crappy, but the problem I had was I ended up breaking the screw that was on there. So now I have 2 that I need to get off somehow. So I got 2 options. Basically, I can try to find another base that's good, which will take a long time, or I can see if I can't drill out these screws, re-tap it, put different screws in from a different carburetor, and make this flat again and see if it works. I'll probably try that first. I wish my parts car had a carburetor like this, but the parts car has a different one. It's completely different than this, so the base won't work. I think there's a difference between a Rochester one and a Carter carburetor. I think this is the Carter, the other one's a Rochester. But yeah, one little thing at a time, and I guess I can let the rest of it soak while I try to fix that. The problem with these screws is after they installed them, they smashed the ends of them so that they can never back out and then fall down into the engine, I'm assuming. And so taking them out, you pretty much have to break them to remove them. I'm hoping a parts carburetor I have has a different screw, but what I think I am able to do, well, I got it out some way. I can back that out through the bottom and then hopefully find 2 new screws to replace them with. So this is probably hard for you guys to see, but what I'm doing is I'm basically drilling out the broken screws. A brand new carburetor core is like $200+ on eBay. I don't want to wait around for another one. So if this doesn't work, I'm not really out anything other than time. But we'll see. So the way I see it is that these flaps are flat. and the way that they work is the screws don't center them completely. The bores end up centering them. All the screws do is hold them to the rod. So I'm thinking if I can drill these out straight, then I will be able to put different screws in. We'll see. But the first thing I have to do is get the screws out. So I have this piece of wood on my drill press, and if you notice, these actually don't sit straight across with the carburetor. So what I've been doing is I'm having to lift that up like that in order to get them flat, and so my screw goes in straight, or so my drill bit goes in straight. And yeah, so I've gotten one done, and I'm going to do the other one, and then see what I can do about tapping the hole and putting a different screw in there and seeing if I can get it to work. If not, I'll just have to look for another core. Alright guys, I'm super thrilled about this fix. So this is the finished product. So basically what I did is, you saw I used the drill press to make the holes. I stole 2 screws out of this, what's left of an Edelbrock. You can see it's not worth trying to make a carburetor again out of. But I stole some screws out of these. And the thing is, these screws are just a little bit bigger than what came out of this. So I took this tap right here, and this is the smallest one I had, and amazingly enough, the thread on this matched the screws that came out of that Edelbrock. And then I slowly but surely went through and added threads to the holes that I had drilled, and then I screwed in the screws, and I flattened this part out so it wasn't bent anymore. So now it looks, I mean, pretty darn close to the other one, and the gaps look very, very similar, and the best part is it works really well. So right there, it took an extra like 2 hours, but I saved myself from having, I think, to buy another base for this carburetor. Hope you guys don't think that's too bubba, but I don't know what else I could have done. But there it is. Hopefully it doesn't change too much how the way the car runs, but it's going to be better because there's no gap like there was before. So, disaster averted, I think. Alright, moment of truth. We have the fuel pump on. We have my lawnmower gas tank to pump gas to it. We have a carburetor that is rebuilt. I've already primed it. I filled the float bowls full of gas, so that should be good. I have the cooling system for the most part hooked up. The only thing, I just wanted water in the block when I get it to run. I'm not going to run it for very long. I don't have my generator, so because of that, the water pump won't be turning with the belt. But I wanted at least some water in it. So let's turn the key, see what happens. go. It runs. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is A, check and make sure my vacuum advance works, because when I was revving it, it didn't like it. B, I'm going to pull the rocker arm shaft, and I'm going to take all the push rods out and clean them. I just feel like they should have oil up through them more than the two that are actually doing it. The reason being is because according to the gauge in the car, it has 30 plus pounds of oil pressure. That should be plenty. So they might be clogged up, just from sitting. So we'll do that, and then we will button up the cooling system. I gotta buy a heater hose. I might just bypass the heater control right there really quickly, and I need to hook up my water pump and get that starting to work, and then we can run it more. But there you go, it ran. And you know what, I feel like with some heat, and see this one right here isn't as loose as it was. With some heat and some run time, this car should make a good car. We'll see. But I might need to go back through the carburetor. I don't know why it's bogging like that, but there you go.